I'm so stoked for this. I recently had the opportunity to speak with one of my all-time guitar heroes. That's Andy Summers from The Police and Beyond the Police as well. I first heard him when I was maybe 13. I turned 13 in 1979. And at that time and for the next handful of years, music was just everything to me. Nothing else meant more to me than music. Maybe you were that way too. It's just a special age and music hits you in a particular way. So as I was absorbing as much music as I possibly could, there was this band that was absolutely blazing through all that time, which was The Police, and the guitarist was Andy Summers. What I loved about him was, I was never that much of, about soloing. I liked playing rhythm. I liked finding textures. I was already curious about jazz. So when I heard somebody on a rock record or pop record, I don't know how you would categorize The Police, but Andy Summers was using some pretty unusual chord voicings, I guess borrowed from jazz, you might say. But it didn't sound jazzy. It just fit into this really intense, high-impact music. So, I soaked all of that up. So I was so thrilled when this opportunity came up to get to speak with him and to ask him about what he's doing now, which is he's on he's touring with his one-man show, which is called The Cracked Lens and a Missing String. It's a multimedia show. It features his photography and his music and a bit of storytelling. So check out his website and see if he's coming to your town. So that's most of what we focused on in this conversation. I didn't ask him a whole lot about The Police. I figured that territory has been well covered. And in fact, I interviewed him 20-something years ago for Guitar Player magazine and got to cover some of that territory. So really, what's here is just more about what he's doing now, about photography, about art, about how he approaches music, and about what he's doing next. Before we get into it with Andy Summers, I have a small ask, which is that if you enjoy this interview and you'd like to see more stuff like this, as well as lessons and a little bit of gear talk, make sure that you subscribe to this channel, Guitar Tips. It really helps give the channel some life, and I appreciate that. So now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Andy Summers. I haven't had a chance to see the show that you're touring with now, which is A Cracked Lens and a Missing String. I hope to catch it when you come back through New York. I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about what the show is and how you've put it together.
So, I mean, it is what we were just talking about. See, I saw those films and it's always in my head. And eventually I got into photography and found I had a natural thing for it and became absolutely obsessed with it. And, and it was very parallel to, like the guitar playing and music and complete involvement with music. So oddly, all these years later, I've managed to bring it together in one show. And I don't know why I didn't do this really before. Although I think the technology has enabled us, at this point, it's become so much easier to do something like this. So I'm solo on stage, big cinema screen. And so what I've done is I've made these sequences of photography, which I literally play to. It's like the oldest one in the book, a guy, like the 1920s, a guy playing the organ in front of a screen, we haven't gone very far from that. It's always been around. People go, oh, this is so radical. I go, not really. I'm doing it's been done before, but not with me, not with all these guitar effects, with all this modern stuff that we can do. So, as a guitarist, you would appreciate this. I have my various pedals. I play through an Eventide harmonizer, which is incredible. And, I can set up some pretty amazing stuff with echoes and, all the various electronic devices I have. And mostly it's improvising. What dictated is like the way I set an echo delay thing on the harmonizer, and so they're pretty fancy. And I can get various rhythms, but I'm basically improvise them every night. They're never the same. One or two I do with backing tracks. I do solo guitar. Like I play around midnight. We've got a beautiful photographic sequence, all stuff I shot in New York. So that works out pretty well. I mean, actually, it's going down a storm everywhere we go. People are liking it. It's not so abstract that they go, didn't get it at all. It goes well. I'm going to play some well-known music at the end. Let's put it that way. No, at the end, we work up to this in the show. I mean, it's all worked out. And actually, I've just done 8 shows. So this was like in the deep end, as you would appreciate. I practice it in the studio. We have the pictures up on the wall, and I practice it. And the minute you're in front of an audience, it all changes. I go, oh my God, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. And so these first 8 shows were very instructive because there's a few things. In fact, today I'm literally going to go to the studio, adding a few things in, changing a couple of little musical points, sort of finessing it now. I mean, I think I've got it now, but it was great to go and do those 8 shows. And now I think I'm up and running with it. Yeah. So, that's the way it is. So it's a lot of guitar playing, obviously all guitar. I do a whole Brazilian section. I play this beautiful music with a lot of photography that I did in Brazil. So it's a true audio-visual show.
You mentioned that at one point in the show you play around midnight, and I wanted to ask you a bit about Monk. I know 20-ish years ago you made a record called Green Chimneys where you featured Thelonious Monk's music. And then just a few years ago you played a show in New York, I know with some other guitar players, Steve Cardenas and Miles Ozaki. What is it about Monk's music that's so enduring for you?
Well, obviously the way he composed, those compositions are, people think, oh, he's so weird. So actually they're very bright, poppy little tunes, most of them. They're not that difficult. But of course, his approach to them is so quirky. He uses lots of flat sevenths, flat fifths, the way he plays, and his sense of time. God, I was listening to looked at one last night, and it's just his sense of time is so beautiful. I mean, he's a quirky player. He doesn't play the standard bebop lines of the time, like, I can really get through these changes. He's much more outside of that, but it's extremely individual and, reflects him as a person so well. It is unique. But he also writes great tunes, with beautiful harmonies. I mean, he was a great musician. But I think it's that quirkiness that is so appealing that I felt in the end like I've got to do an album of this. So I studied it for about 6 months straight before I got in there and had a go at it. So, I think that quality where he's a true original is what makes him sustain for, into the time we're in right now. That's all this time. And I saw him when I was 16 and I was very inspired by it.
You saw him play live?
Yeah. When I was a kid in England, I think I was 16, and I remember getting the train to London. It was at the Croydon Fairfield Hall, I think. And maybe he was on with Dizzy Gillespie. It was like a sort of a American jazz comes to England thing, a few stuff, but he was in it.
I saw a video from your YouTube from not too long ago, and you were backstage somewhere, and you were playing Blue Monk, but in A. And
yeah, I do. It's funny you should say that, because as I was, sort of recovering from the first sort of blast of these gigs and traveling a bit, the one thing I think I'm going to put back in, because we're talking about it, and I go, I should put that in the show. I want to put a picture of, I talk about, I put a picture of Monk on the screen, and then I'm going to play Blue Monk, as you said, in A. Just because in A, as you know, as a guitarist, you can keep a couple of open strings going, so you can hold the whole architecture together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you play in B flat? Your guitars go down one fret and play it. It's dead easy. You got more of a shot at it.
So how do you keep it? What keeps the guitar fresh for you?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I've never gotten tired of it. I enjoy it. I like being a guitarist. I mean, it's I can't even imagine life without it because it's been a part of me since I was a kid.
Right.
So what? Okay, life is terrible. Well, you've still got the guitar. So whatever. It's like the sort of central fact of your existence. You always come back to it. You're back to this, and I never got bored with it. I think maybe oddly, when I say that, I'm just catching myself. I think right after the Police, I sort of ended. I sort of went through a weird period where I know now I'm thinking about it, where I didn't want to play much anymore. I would do shows and I made records and I barely picked up the guitar. It was a sort of weird head trip that I went through. And then I went on tour with Larry Coryell. The two of us played together. And Larry's a very enthusiastic person. And it was actually that he was the catalyst. He brought me back to it. And after I, played and toured with Larry, I started playing all the time again, and it's never gone away again. Yeah.
Wow, that's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a true story. That's an absolutely true story. I think maybe after I become really famous with the Police and all that, I thought, well, I've done it. I don't know what went. There was something in my head, and it was like, this is not really me. And after that time with Larry, then I completely got back into playing again, because he was a very enthusiastic guy, a great guy.
During the years that you were with the Police, you always had these two other guys to bounce ideas off of, and you were in bands obviously before the Police. I'm wondering, these days, is there a musician or a handful of musicians around you that you work with regularly that you bounce ideas off of, or is it?
No, not really. And it's sort of starting to bother me a bit, because I live in Los Angeles and, I've been here for a while. And I think one of the things that has happened is, well, I am who I am. So I'm not like in there with everybody. I used to be more like that. I played for years. I had drummers and bass players. I had all the best drummers and the best players. And I had different groups and combos that I played with. And I think the pandemic has actually destroyed quite a lot of that. The last 3 records I played everything, including drums and bass. I did all of it because I played drums for years. So, but now I'm absolutely due for a new recording or 2. And so I'm definitely going to bring some people in to play with. I'm thinking about it. I think I've been quite wrapped up in sort of photography books and writing books and other pursuits, but I'm thinking next year I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to try and make at least 2 records. I'd like to make a record with a string quartet, but I've got to think about it. Maybe I could work up the right thing. I mean, I could get a drummer and bass player and make a record in a few days and put something out.
Right.
No problem. Yeah. Yeah, I think the pandemic knocked us out about it. I don't know what other people are doing. I mean, I'm going out on the road now, and it's the first time. And I think about 3 years, and it seems like about par for the course for most people. We couldn't really go out and do it. And, I'm having to get my road traveling chops up again. Like I was in a sort of state of shock after I did the first 6. Like, Christ, yeah. Okay, I've got to remember how to pack a suitcase. Got to be so organized. Christ. Yeah.
Right. Like people who aren't musicians probably think, well, you're going on tour, you've got to get your chops up, meaning you sit in a room with a metronome for a few days and you kind of get your hands in shape. But they don't appreciate, like, road chops is so much more than your hands.
Yeah. Man, you got to get used to that whole traveling thing, sitting there waiting, getting out, getting up, going upstairs, coming back now, meet there, go on the side. Well, it's the thing. Most people go, oh, I want to go on the road with you. They last about 3 days and they go, Yeah, it's really true.
Yeah.
I got an old taste of it now. And now after literally, coming back home and going, oh, I've done those shows. And I'm going, okay, I've got to organize this. This has got to be like this. This is like this. Because, literally you get to the bloody hotel room every night and go, where's my iPhone cord, or whatever. And I fucking find it, and this is the way it is. And that's like that with everything. And so now I've realized, now I'm remembering how you do this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's got to be sort of military. Otherwise, you just waste so much time,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Well, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned these solo records you made. I was listening to Harmonics of the Night, which is just full of these fantastic textures, electric guitar textures. And it feels on that record that the textures are real tied in with the tune, with the compositions themselves. And I wonder, were you experimenting with sounds as you were composing, or were you recording sort of more plain sounds?
Well, that's a very good
stuff in post?
Yeah, no, it's a good musical point, because people ask me that. They go, well, where did it come from? And I go, sometimes I didn't sit at home and try and write out on manuscript these exact things. You can't, because, I'm a complete full of musician. And so I've got my stuff down there. And so sometimes, this sounds weird, but I sort of let the effects or the pedals or whatever I've got, or however I combined them, guide me. And I go, because I will be looking for a fresh, let's just say sonic quality, which you could also call sound. And I went, that's good. That's got a thing. I've got a thing. Now let me see if I can guide it into a form of composition, rather than, writing out the whole melody and harmony and all that, and then trying to just play it. Because I'm looking for something that catches the ear, and in today's world, it's sort of got to be stranger, sonic, blah blah blah. And I know that I've got all the harmony and melodic lines inside me anyway. So, but I let the sonic things guide me, and so most of those albums were done that way, not fully prepared. Here's the 12 songs I've got; they're all written out. Here's your parts, everybody. No, this was like the lone wolf going in with the pedals. And, I have a very musical engineer that understands that. And, we sort of collaborate on trying to get that thing together, like other people. Like I've got millions of pedals and things, and I try to sort of stay on top of it. Occasionally something new comes out that's worth a glance, not very often. Mostly it's the same old shit, echo, chorus, fuzzbox. Yeah, so they keep making them. We've got enough, guys. Okay, but I've got a few weird ones, that I like to use. So part of you as a guitarist, part of you as, the sonic technician, and you're like combining pedals, and you're trying to get something, that's ear catching in itself, and it may guide you into a composition, and then to see how good you are. If you can come up with something interesting. But that's kind of how I did those, like, group of the last 3 records. And now, next, I want to go play the drums and bass and do something a bit more raw.
Yeah,
a little bit different.
Well, that would be
raw is the right word, but sort of unadulterated guitar with great bass player and drummer. And I've got some people in mind.
Yeah.